Hello viewers, welcome to my YouTube channel. Our today's video is about sonnet writing in English literature. So this video is going to be very lengthy, but it will be very helpful for you. And you have not to go anywhere for this lesson. That is sonnet writing in English literature. So watch the full video, and this video is enough for you so that you can make your own study materials. So keeping all this in mind, I have made it. So let's start. So let, let me choose. Uh, Here is our lesson sonnet. Yes, come on. Look at the heading. Sonnet, a brief history of sonnet writing in English literature. So our today's lesson is about sonnet, a brief history of sonnet writing in English literature. You know, sonnet is a poem of 14 lines with specific rhyme scheme. A sonnet is a kind of lyric. A sonnet is a kind of lyric, a poem of 14 lines with specific rhyme scheme. The word sonnet comes from sonetto, meaning a sound. It originated in Italy. It was composed by, most probably by Dante, and the sonnet he wrote addressed his beloved Beatrice, also known as Bis. After Dante, Petrarch gave perfection to this kind of poetry. He wrote sonnet in honor of his lady love Laura. Petrarch wrote the sonnet following specific pattern 8 plus 6, 8 first 8 lines, uh, that is called octave, and the last 6 lines, that is called sestet. So that is to say, his sonnet is divided into two sections. The first section comprises of 8 lines. The second section contains 6 lines. The first section is known as octave and second section is known as sestet. There is a gap between the two sections, and the turning point from the first section to second section is known as volta. So the gap is called volta, gap between octave and sestet. Every sonnet is in some way or other a love poem. Alternatively, it can be said that subject alternatively the subject matter of a sonnet is almost invariably a love. Sir Thomas Waite is said to be the father of sonnet in English literature. Sir Thomas Waite, a poet of 16th century. He was a great scholar, exposed to the rays of Renaissance. He visited Italy, where he came in contact with the sonnet of Petrarch. The form of poetry known as sonnet impressed him greatly. When he came to England, he made up his mind to introduce sonnet into English. That was highly successful, and he produced a good number of sonnets following the model of Petrarchan sonnet. So his sonnet, according to convention, is divided into two sections, octave and sestet, with a volta in between. The rhyme scheme adopted by Sir Watt is as follow. A B A B A B A B C D E C D E. So the rhyme scheme of Sir Watts' sonnet is A B A B A B A B, that is octave, and the rhyme scheme of the sestet is C D E C D E. Earl of Surrey, Earl of Surrey, Henry Howard is another notable figure in sonneteer, but he did not fully comply with the pattern introduced by Petrarch and adapted by Watt. He invented a new design, 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 2. In other words, the pattern introduced by Sare is of 3 quatrains followed by a couplet, 3 quatrains, 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus a couplet followed by a two lines. In a word, he composed them in English or Shakespearean mode. Shakespeare, who wrote 154 sonnets, adhered to this pattern introduced by Surrey, Earl of Surrey, whose original name is Henry Howard, or real name is Henry Howard, a contemporary and friend of Sir Thomas Watt. So, where are we reading? Here, couplet. In a word, he composed them in English or Shakespearean mode. Shakespeare, who wrote 154 sonnets, adhered to pattern introduced by Surrey. Samuel Daniel and Michael Drayton are two sonnetiers who wrote sonnets with considerable success. Delia, dated in 1592, is the sonnet series written by Samuel Daniel. Ideas Mirror, published in 1594 by Michael Drayton, is the cycle of 64 sonnets. Finally, it is Shakespeare who gave immortal glory to sonnet in English. His sonnets were dedicated to Mr. W.H., one of his patrons. Nobody knows who Mr. W.H. was. The identity of the man is still in mystery. However, there are scholars who think that Mr. W.H. was Earl of Southampton, that is Henry Wriothesley. Side by side, there is still another school of scholar. According to them, Mr. W.H. was William Herbert, Earl of Pembroke, but neither of the speculation carry conviction. So, like Shakespeare, his W.H. remains shrouded in mystery. There are 4 characters in Shakespearean sonnets. They are the poet himself. So there are 4 characters, overall 4 characters in Shakespeare's sonnets, and they are the poet himself, his fair friend, the dark lady, the rival poet. Most of the sonnets are addressed to a paragon of beauty. The fair friend is the prime of his life, is in the prime of his life. He is extremely handsome. The poet boasts for the beauty of his friend, but he is anxious about one thing. His friend, however beautiful, is a mortal creature. With the passage of time, his beauty, the poet knows, will desert him. So the poet is in search of a mean by which he may save the beauty of his friend from destruction. At long last, he finds the solution. He thinks that he will transport it in poetry. That is to say, he will write poetry celebrating the beauty and virtues of his friend. His poetry is long ensuring eternity. This is how his friend will conquer time and become an object of appreciation forever. In some sonnet, Shakespeare deals with a woman, the dark lady. The dark lady, the lady is dark not because of her dark complexion, but because of her dark eyes. In a word, she is dark eyed. In another sense, she may be regarded as dark, though she is faithful to the poet. But when the poet is away, the lady secretly loves the poet's friend. This is a case of infidelity in her. The poet knows everything about the nature of the lady, but strange enough, the poet neither chides nor forsakes her. There There are some sonnets which are about the rival poet. The fact is that there appears a poet on the scene. He is the rival of our poet. It is noticed that the fair friend develops a close intimacy with the rival poet. So, fair friends makes friendship with the rival poet of William Shakespeare. As a result, our poet is neglected and it hurts him greatly. At last, with a heavy heart, the poet takes leave of his fair friend and he goes to a remote land where he remains separated from his friend. Great is his misery, and he thinks his days are numbered. Apart from William Shakespeare, in the 16th century English literature, there are two luminous sonnetiers. They are Sir Philip Sidney and Edmund Spenser, the poet of the epic The Fairy Queen. Sidney followed the model of Petrarch in writing sonnet. His 108 sonnets were included in his sonnet anthology called Astrophel and Stella. You know Astrophel, the stargazer, and Stella, uh, the star. Astrophel stands for uh, poet Sir Philip Sidney, and Stella, his beloved Penelope. The first sonnet of the anthology, Loving in Truth, serves as poetry and poetics. Look in thy heart and write, the last line of the first sonnet of the anthology Astrophel and Stella. You know the sonnet Astrophel and Stella. It is both it is about poetry and poetics. Means poetics means how to write poem, how to write poetry. So look in thy heart and write. Spenserian sonnet, named after its originator, poet Edmund Spenser, is variants in form. The rhyme scheme of his sonnet is AB AB, BC BC, CD CD, EE. The linked rhymes of his quatrains suggest the linked rhymes of such Italian form as terza rima. Spenser published his 88 sonnets in Amoretti. In Amoretti, the sonnet anthology of uh, Edmund Spenser is known as Amoretti. It is a compilation of 88 sonnets. In 17th century, poets like John Donne, George Herbert wrote sonnet for religious purpose, and Milton used sonnet as a general meditative poem. Probably Milton's most famous sonnet is When I Consider How My Light is Spent, titled by a later edition On His Blindness. On His Blindness, the name of the sonnet is very important from exam point of view. So, On His Blindness is a sonnet by Milton, John Milton. Both the Shakespearean and Petrarchan rhyme schemes were popular throughout this period, throughout 17th century, as well as with many variants. In Restoration period, the art of writing sonnet confronted declination. It came back in Romantic period. Wordsworth wrote a good number of sonnets, of which among the best known are Upon Westminster Bridge, in which the poet was elated at the beauty of the city London. In one morning, he saw the beauty of city London from Westminster Bridge and wrote the sonnet composed upon Westminster Bridge. The world is too much with us. London 1802 are addressed to Milton are example of sonnets written by William Wordsworth. His sonnets were essentially modeled on Milton's. Keats' approaches were formal and Shelley innovated radically, creating his own rhyme scheme for the sonnet Ozymandias. 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 Sonnet from Portuguese brought fame and recognition to Elizabeth Barrett Browning and Dante Gabriel Rossetti. They belong to Victorian age. So Elizabeth Barrett Browning, wife of Robert Browning, another great poet and rival of Tennyson's, a master of dramatic monologue. And Dante Gabriel Rossetti wrote few successful traditional sonnets. Modern Love, published in 1862 by George Meredith, is a collection of 50 sonnets about the failure of his first marriage. He made a little change in this kind of poetry, followed 16 lines instead of 14. So it is a poem of 16 line sonnet. G.M. Hopkins G.M. Hopkins wrote several major sonnets, often in sprung rhythm, such as The Wind Over and the Terrible or Dark Sonnet with variants. The terrible or dark sonnets are those sonnets in which the poet articulates his deepest agonies of despair at a world which is a spiritual wilderness, where it is seems that the sinner prosper and the good suffer. O Lord, thou art indeed just a Lord, is his sonnet. In 20th century, flexibility in writing sonnets was extended. The notable sonnetiers of 20th century are W. B. Yeats, Wilfred Owen, W. H. Auden, Robert Roy Campbell, Robert Lowell, Seamus Heaney, Geoffrey Hill, etc. Wilfred Owen's sonnet Anthem for Doomed Youth is a sonnet of the early 20th century. Irish poet Yeats, Seamus Heaney, Robert Lowell, Geoffrey Hill wrote sonnets using half-rhyme model. In American poetry, the first notable poet to use sonnet form was Edgar Allan Poe. To conclude, at present age two sonnets are being written by eminent poets. Now a new kind of sonnet has entered in the arena of poetry, that is word sonnet, which is a 14 lines poem with one word per line, frequently allusive and imagistic. Word sonnets can also be irreverent and playful, since from its origin sonnet has illuminated the hearts of the practitioners of poetry and scholars and readers of poems. It will flourish more. One can hope, coping with the changes in future and keeping up its magnitude and gravity. So this is the section in which I have dealt with the history of sonnet writing in English literature from Sir Thomas Watt to modern age with W.B. Yeats' Anthem from the Doomed Youth and one of the greatest Victorian poet, though Victorian, but his poetry was published in the modern age in 1918. That is yeah, G.M. Hopkins. His Wind Hover is a great example of sonnet. Sonnet, uh, mm, sonnet. Yes. It's now it is the I can I can name my entire this entire I can divide this entire video into three parts. So the first part I deal with a brief history of sonnet writing in English literature. Now, in the second part, in the second section, we shall know, we shall learn uh, different rhyme scheme associated with sonnets, different rhyme scheme of sonnets. The Petrarcana or Italian sonnet, yes. Mainly sonnets are divided into two categories. One is Petrarchan sonnet or Italian, and the second division is Shakespearean or English sonnets. So, apart from Petrarchan or Shakespearean sonnets, there are variant type of sonnets, and of which the most interesting is cartel sonnet. That is, cartel means average, shortened. So 11 line. To say more accurately, 10 and a half line sonnets invented by another sonnet form invented by G.M. Hopkins, and his Pied Beauty is a great example of cartel sonnet. So here we shall learn different rhyme scheme of sonnet. Petrarchan or Italian sonnet. What is the rhyme scheme of Petrarchan or Italian sonnet? ABBA, that is uh, octave, and sestet. Sestet here, sestet can be written in different rhyming scheme. So first is CDE, CDE, or CD, 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 or CDC, CDC. That is the Petrarchan or Italian sonnets rhyme scheme of Italian sonnet. Next, English or Shakespearean sonnet. The rhyme scheme of Shakespearean sonnet is AB, AB, CD, CD, EF, EF, GG. So the rhyme scheme of Shakespearean sonnet is AB, AB, CD, CD, EF, EF, GG. The three quatrains and a couplet. Three quatrains followed by a couplet. GG. Spencerian sonnet AB, AB, BC, BC, CD, CD, EE. Miltonic sonnet ABBA, ABBA, CDE, CDE. Terjarima sonnet ABA, BCB, CDC, DED, and so on. And Cartel sonnets, I already mentioned it. So, invented by G.M. Hopkins, ABC, ABC. So ABC, ABC. Octave becomes sestet, and sestet becomes a quadrant. So I told you, I mentioned it that cartel means shortened, compressed, or abridged. So AB and the last 5 line, 4.5 line, that is DBCDC or DCBDC. Here in the third part of our video, third part of our lesson, we shall now we will familiar with uh, literary terms associated with sonnet. Couplet, a group of two lines or verse rhyming each other, that is couplet. Quatrain, a stanza of four lines or verses rhyming alternately, connected with English or Shakespearean sonnet. So Shakespearean sonnet is an affair of three quatrains followed by couplet. Octave. An octave is a stanza of 8 lines. It forms the first part of the Italian or Petrarchan sonnet. Problems or crises are stated in it. Sestet. It is a stanza of 6 lines. It serves the last part of Italian or Petrarchan sonnet. In it, resolution is affirmed. In octave, problem or crisis are stated, and in sestet, resolution is affirmed. So, settled. The problems are settled down in sestet. Volta, you know, the gap between octave and sestet is called volta. Sonnet sequence or sonnet series or sonnet cycle. It refers to a number of sonnets linked together, exploring various aspects of poet's thoughts over something or someone. Shakespeare wrote his sonnets in a sequence, as Sidney in Astrophel and Stella, Spenser in Amoretti, which is considered to be the first sonnet sequence in the history of English literature. So, this is all about our today's video. So, if you find the video helpful for you or important for, yes, it is important. uh, if you find it helpful or effective, then please subscribe my channel and share among your friends and press the notification button so that you never miss an update. So thank you.